All right, Locker and Philosophers fans, we are here today with another star-studded episode. The inbox has been filling up with requests to get the regionally famous Jennifer Taylor on the show after Tyler Bedelon's very good review. So today we've got the pleasure of having Jennifer Taylor here in the studio, as well as, of course, my co-host, Mike Dimitrievsky. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, I'm doing well. And Miss Jennifer Taylor, how are you?
I'm great. It's a snow day.
Yeah, that's always good.
Quote unquote snow day.
Yeah. Yeah, with the ice melting and it's like 35 degrees. There's a snow day somehow.
Back in my day.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I feel as I get older, I say that too, though.
You are pretty old.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, if you couldn't tell, she's a teacher since she has a snow day. So, Jennifer Taylor, where did you grow up and what did you do for fun?
I grew up in Northwest Detroit near Plymouth and Evergreen. And for fun, we had an amazing neighborhood. We had a lot of kids in the neighborhood and we just really made our own fun. We did a lot of stuff outside. We made up our own games. Just played until the street lights came on.
Cool. And you are the youngest of four, right? So it's youngest of four girls, which does not sound like a fun time.
For my dad, right?
Yeah, exactly. So tell us about that. Tell us about that dynamic and growing up in Detroit at that time period. Obviously, Detroit has changed a lot in the subsequent years.
Yeah, for sure. I was born in 1964, and I am the youngest of four girls. My oldest sister is 15 years older than me, and then the next oldest is 13 years older than me, and then the next is 6 years older than me. So quite a gap. It was almost like living with really two different sets of kids for my parents, because I honestly don't remember a whole lot of my two older sisters living with us. Because by the time I was 5, they were pretty much out on their own. But we had a really close family, and despite no boys for my dad, he always enjoyed being around the girls, or at least he pretended to. He bowled a lot though, so I don't know, maybe that was his escape from us. And it was a great dynamic. It was a great place to grow up and a great time to grow up in the city.
Okay. And what was it like? I mean, so you were born in 64, so you moved out at what age?
We moved out of Detroit in 1983.
Okay.
So I was 19 years old when we moved out. So there was a lot of change that happened through those years. I started kindergarten in 1969. Graduated from high school in 1981. I did go to Detroit Public Schools all the way through my education, and so it was a great place to grow up. And then there was a lot of change that I don't know. You hear about white flight after the riots and everything, and that was not my family's initiative at all. My parents taught us from a very young age that we accepted everybody as they were, and that we, a lot of our neighbors did leave during that time period and move out of the city and go to the suburbs. I think we were the last ones to leave. And that was unfortunately not by choice.
What do you mean by that?
First of all, elementary school was great. I did actually experience busing, so desegregation. When I was in elementary school, and this again was after the riots, and you've got people that are trying to find their place in society, which is really my perception on what the cause of that was. But elementary school was great. In elementary school, we had students that were actually bused to our elementary school. So we had a predominantly white neighborhood, and we had black kids that were bused in, and I wanted nothing more than to be their friends. it, I'm sure, was very awkward for them coming into a neighborhood that was very different from their own. And my sisters didn't quite experience that. They were older and actually remember when the riots happened and, what things were like during that time. It wasn't until middle school that I was actually bused. So I was bused out of our neighborhood into a middle school that was actually in the center of the project, so low income housing area. And there was a lot of gang activity there. Didn't so much experience the gang activity inside of school, but there were a couple of situations like waiting for the bus that were super uncomfortable. I still went to school every day and did my thing because I feel like you get what you put into your education. And then when that stint was over in middle school, high school, I went to Cody High School in Detroit.
That's where my mom graduated.
Did she really?
Yeah, that's awesome. Look at that.
What year did she graduate? Do you know?
She is 63.
Okay. Maybe my sister knows her because
Yeah.
Jody is Jody's gonna be 66 this year.
Yeah, so they would have been.
And so they would have, yeah.
She's always proud of that, Cody.
Yeah.
That's small. Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you went to Athens and so did my kids. So
Yeah. See that? Carlos is bald. I'm bald. Look at that.
Oh, fun fact I learned yesterday. Mike won best hair
Yes.
at Athens High School his
Yes.
junior
You
year.
did?
You know how they had like the best dress? Those
Yeah,
little
yeah.
awards? I don't know if they still do that kind
Oh
of
yeah,
stuff.
they
but
they do.
11th grade. I put a lot of work. It took me, freshman year, sophomore year, and I finally got it, 11th grade, and yeah.
Now
And
look
then
at
it
you.
all went away.
Yeah.
Shortly after high school.
So high school was good for me. I would say when I went to Cody, probably a little different percentages when you were there when it comes to diversity. It was probably 96% Black when I was there. And really it just, I treat that as an experience in life that just taught me how people are people. I never had a bad experience in high school when it comes to anything racial. I did avoid certain situations. Back in the day, high school was a course. Not really a course, but you had to select. I don't mean high school. Lunch was a course, and you had to select it. So if you wanted to have a lunch hour, you put it on your schedule. If you
really?
didn't want to have a lunch hour, then you filled that time with a class, and you could leave school early. So
Like an hour early?
Yep.
That's
yeah. So that's what I did. The lunchroom was not a safe place to be. And the bathrooms were really sometimes not a safe place to be for whatever reasons. And people smoked in the Johns and did drugs and whatever.
That's the thing.
And I just opted to do my very best to avoid those situations, just to not put myself in a situation where something might happen. I had awesome teachers in high school. I remember my elementary and my high school teachers more because I think middle school is a really awkward time for a lot of people, and being bused into a different neighborhood and just having some, different things that make you a little bit more vulnerable, I think make your memory not as good sometimes. High school was great. I remained in contact with a couple of my teachers. Up until a couple years ago. I mean, it's been a couple years since I've talked to them. But it was a good experience for me. I felt well prepared for college. So then high school was over. I stayed home to go to college. I went to Mercy College in Detroit. And so I didn't go away. I lived at home. And that's when things kind of started to happen in our neighborhood that really kind of directly happened to us, that we kind of felt like we were being pushed out. Our house was broken into a couple times, and one time while we were home and sleeping, another time we were not home and it was completely ransacked. I mean, mattresses were thrown off our beds, all of our clothes were on the floor. We knew who actually did it because there was a trail going from our house to their house with jewelry that had been dropped over the fence. It was just 2 houses down. I made it common knowledge to one of our neighbors at the time that I knew who did it. And within a week, there was a bottle thrown through our front window. So it was more of a, we need to leave for our own safety at this point. And not something that my parents ever dreamed they would do because that was home for us. So that's what kind of moved us away. And we moved to Farmington Hills, just a block away from my sister lived. And I kind of think that maybe that was another reason that my mom and dad could be a little bit closer to their grandkids. So yeah, that's kind of what took us out of the city.
Did your parents grow up in Detroit?
Yes. Yeah, my mom and dad both grew up in Detroit. My dad grew up in the Rosedale Park area.
Oh, so he knows my parents' bakery, 100%.
What's the bakery?
Newton's.
Oh my
Bakery.
gosh.
Yeah.
Newton's is who supplied every one of our Christmas Eve sloppy Joe buns that we still continue to have that tradition. We just don't have Newton's buns anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, 6 Mile and Outer Drive is where where my dad grew up.
Yeah, they bought it right from the Newton family. My grandpa bought it from the Newton family, and then they had it until basically COVID, and then some things had, like my aunt passed away, and then they just decided like, okay, it's time to retire in a sense, But yeah, so I grew up working there.
Oh, on 6 Mile.
Yeah.
Okay, so between Outer Drive and Southfield, I know right where.
Right on
Newton's
Greenview
was.
was the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep. That's very cool.
Yeah. See, everybody's a little smaller. The world's a little smaller.
We were just talking about that the other night, Carlos. About the more conversation you have, the smaller the world becomes. No, so my dad grew up there on Outer Drive in Santa Maria. That's where my grandparents built their house. And my dad's family, my dad's parents were both college educated. My mom, they both went to Redford High School. My mom grew up in Brightmoor. And so that's the other side of the tracks. My mom's parents, not college educated. My grandma worked at a bakery. And not Newton's, but she worked at a bakery.
Which bakery? You remember?
Iverson's, I think.
Okay, yeah, my dad knows Iverson.
Finkel and
my dad knew them.
Yeah. Right by Redford High School. Finkel, Lasher.
Yeah.
Yep. She worked at the bakery, and my grandfather had a gas station. So yeah, they grew up and they got married young. They got married young at 18 and 19 years old, and their parents weren't really happy about that at the time. And I think that kind of molded them into being people that did not, they didn't give us a whole lot of guidance when it came to our choices and our, who we married, because it was all about love and it was our choice. It wasn't theirs. And I think that came from their own experience with their parents. But they were very close with their parents. We had great relationships with our grandparents and everything.
Okay, so it sounds like you probably don't remember the 67 riots. After that point, like how quickly do you remember things changing now that you look back at it?
So I do remember one specific thing from the 67 riots. I was 3.5 years old, and I don't know if this was directly after. I know you don't really remember things, until you're about 5 or so. But one thing I specifically remember, and it was related to the situation, was my mom and I were driving together, just the two of us. And we were driving through Rouge Park, and we were on, we always called it the Whoosh Hill. Spinoza area over by Lessinger High School or Lessinger Junior High School. The gun range for the Detroit Police Department is back in that area right now where the toboggan runs used to be, and ice skating rink. And they used to have a horse stable there. And I remember actually being there in the car with my mom, and my mom said, "Duck." And I said, "Why?" And she looked at me, she pulled over and she looked at me and said, "If I ever ask you to do that again, don't ask me why." And that's the extent of that conversation. And, my sisters and I have always said that our parents tried to keep things as normal as possible for us in any situation that we've gone through in life, as I think most parents try to do. And again, like going back to the riots, my sisters don't even remember our parents reacting horribly to that because they tried to keep things as normal as possible. But I feel like deep down in her, there was that little bit of fear of how am I going to protect my kids from any backlash that might happen. And unfortunately, at that point, I'm sure in the back of their mind, it was because we're white, but we were also very welcoming and accepting people. So, but I know that my sister had a good friend when she was in elementary school whose parents actually, by choice, had him bus into our elementary school, which was right behind us. And he was a young black boy. And after school, there were times when he came to our house because he couldn't catch the bus to get back home on time or whatever. And our neighbors didn't like it. And my mom told him, "You are always welcome in our home." So I remember things that, that are kind of related and by discussion. But when it comes to things actually changing, I think the hardest thing for me was when my friends started to move away. And some of that was, some of that happened very quickly. We had people that moved out like very quickly when things started to change, probably like early 70s. And that was the biggest effect I had because they're my friends, and it's like, why are they all leaving?
Right.
Why are,
like
can we go? And it was
once.
like, can we go too? That's where I was in it, but I had no idea why. We didn't talk about that at home. We didn't talk about why they were moving away. We talked about, this is our home and this is where we're staying and we will embrace what comes our way. So I also remember having my first grade teacher in elementary school was a young Black woman, and she was gorgeous. And my mom did not know that she was Black until she went to open house to meet her, because I never came home and said, I always just told her how much I loved Mrs. Duncan. She was so pretty, and she, and it was just, my mom came home and I think she was just like, wow, I think we're doing a good job.
That's beautiful. Yeah. See her as a person.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you said you didn't notice people start moving till the 70s, and the riots obviously happened in 67. So how did you notice things changing, or did you notice things changing in between 67 and the early 70s, or what's your memories of that?
I was busy being a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we just played outside. The people that I hung out with were all neighbors that were like next door across the street, and everybody trusted each other, and everybody's parents looked out for everybody's kids. We didn't see our parents a whole lot outside. We were just outdoors. We were making up games. We played tag. We played a game that we made up called Mud Gutter. We played Capture the Flag. And, we just had all kinds of things that we did outdoors. And I think that the healthiest thing is just, being busy being a kid.
Yep.
For sure. And so you said, you always focused on school and that you felt that you get out of it what you put into it. So at what point did becoming a teacher start to work its way into your plan?
Well, becoming a teacher, probably became an idea when I was very young because my dad was a teacher. So my dad taught for 37 years. He taught for 20 years in Detroit Public Schools, and he taught for 17 years in Garden City. And he taught math as well. That's what I teach, middle school. And he was my hero. He was an inspiration to me in every way. He and my mom too, they were both amazing people. But I really felt like I needed, for some reason, to emulate my dad. And so from a very young age, like I started playing school, like my sister Jody and I would play school. We were the two younger ones. And with the neighbors, that was something that, that we would do occasionally. And then I I always had great role models as teachers in school. And they were always the ones that stood out the most to me were definitely people, people persons. And that was my dad. And that's just kind of the route that I started to think about taking. And then when I actually went to college, Mercy College was a big nursing school. And so going there, and I'm not Catholic. So that was a challenge for me to go to a Catholic college, not being Catholic, because there are, religious requirements that you have to go through. The reason that I went there was because my mom worked there. So after I started school full time, my mom was a stay-at-home mom while we were all growing up. And then when I started full time, my mom got this job at Mercy College. And one of her benefits was to send her dependents for free. So my college was fully paid for aside from books and fees. And it ended up being a great experience. And I think my mom felt like she was really contributing to the family, because that, especially going to a private college, that is pretty pricey. So I had no student loans to deal with. I was very apprehensive at first, because, sadly, when I was growing up, a lot of the kids in our neighborhood went to the local parish to go to Catholic school. And the kids, I think, in our neighborhood that went to the public school system felt like the kids that went to the private school made us feel like they were a little bit better than us for some reason. And certainly, I'm sure not intentionally at all, but that feeling was there. And so I was harboring some of that when I was going to college, and I was like, I'm not about this. This is not what I want to do. And, my dad assured me that if I didn't want to go there, they'd figure out a way for me to go somewhere else. And eventually I came to the conclusion that that's where I wanted to go. But I had decided when I went to Mercy that I was either going to go into nursing or teaching. And once I was there, it just hit me that I wanted to be a teacher, and I wanted to teach math. They did not have a math major for teachers at Mercy College at the time, so they had to kind of put one together for me so that I could go back and forth between Mercy and U of D to get the math credits that I needed. So it was kind of like a personalized degree, which I'm really thankful for, and for the people that helped make that happen. But that was kind of where it was. And really, I think that my major decision about becoming a teacher was that I saw my dad's lifestyle. He always worked in the summer because he had 4 daughters and a teacher's salary, which at the time was not the greatest thing. So he always supplemented his income in the summertime. And then I thought, what a great lifestyle that would be as a mom, to raise a family and have the same breaks that my kids had and that type of thing. So that was really kind of what solidified that.
What did he have to say when you decided you were going to be a teacher?
My dad highly discouraged me from going into it. First of all, there was a teacher shortage not a teacher shortage at the time. There weren't a lot of jobs for teachers. And he said, you're going to have a really hard time getting a job unless you specialize in math or science, because that is where you'll have a better chance. So that's what made me go into math as opposed to anything else. And I wasn't very rebellious with my dad but with my parents at all. But for that, I was. And I was like, I am going to do this, and I'm going to find a job, and everything's going to be good.
And did your mom have any opinions on it?
Not really.
Okay. And obviously teaching has changed in the 38 years now that you've been teaching, but if you go back another 37 years, which was the length of time he had been teaching, what did you see over the course of, like, when you when you started getting a little bit older and started thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to want to be a teacher. I like his lifestyle. He gets days off in the summer. Did you see him like working a lot at home, and did any of that ever discourage you? I know you're tutoring all the time now. Kind of did the lifestyle, once you started getting older, did the lifestyle lose some kind of its luster or no?
Good question. No, because I think I had some control over some of that. Like the tutoring, anything I did in the summer, because I did teach summer school for some years. Those were my choice. Like I did those by choice to try to make things better for my family. And when it came to my dad and things like 37 years, so 38 years ago, then the 37 years before that, he saw a lot of change when it came to respect in the classroom, I think, and how teachers were respected. That's discouraging sometimes. But when it comes to, I did see him working at home a lot. I helped him. I helped him check papers. I helped him with those things. He also helped me. I remember sitting around doing math problems with him quite a bit. But you do take your job home with you, for sure. It is not something that you leave. So when people think that you're working from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m., Carlos has seen me working until midnight before. I do a lot of work at home, a lot of planning, a lot of checking. Technology helps, I think, with some of that. I think that has become better to an extent. But there are a lot of other requirements that kind of take away from the fun of the actual job.
If he were to be here right now, what would you think he would think about the current state of teaching now, 38 years after? Yeah, 38 years into your career.
So I think that my dad was really proud of the work that I did, and he got to see a lot of that. He died in 1999, so I had been teaching for 13 years. So he witnessed 13 good years of me teaching, 13 early years, which I think that since then I've become a lot better at what I do.
Yeah, that's a third of your career.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. The first third of the career.
Yeah.
And you always have something to learn in any career. Every day I go to work, I want to be better. So there's always growth that can take place. I think if he were hearing my story, I think that he would think that I made the perfect decision. I did make the perfect decision for me going into the job that I'm in right now. I can honestly say that I hit the jackpot with the job that I have. I've been in the same building for 38 years. A lot of the same teachers, people come to our building and they don't want to leave. It's a great place to teach. You have a lot of parent support. So if he were just hearing my story about education, he would be like, okay, I was wrong. You did the right thing. But not every place is like Boland Park Middle School.
Okay, so since you did just say exactly where you work, what was the decision process like with getting a job in Troy?
Well, my dad played a role in that in a way. The superintendent that he used to work for in Garden City actually became the superintendent in Troy. And I didn't even know, I never heard of Troy before. We lived in Detroit. Then we moved to Farmington Hills. This was like East Side stuff to us. And he had said, you know what? Let me just make a phone call and see if he'll talk to me, and if you can just get an interview. If you can just get an interview in Troy, see what happens. And so he did. He called him and he talked to him, and they had no job openings the year that I graduated. So it was in July of 1986. My dad made this call. He's like, all right, I'll set her up for an interview with the principal at Larson Middle School. And so I went to Larson for an interview. And again, it was just kind of it was like a meet and greet type thing. I went in, I met him, he showed me the building. I knew they didn't have any jobs, so I wasn't very hopeful when it came to that. And then within a week, Troy had a math opening and I had 7 interviews. And so I'm hoping that my dad felt good about opening a door for me, but I'm also hoping that that's not why I got the job. I don't think it's why I got the job. I think I got the job because I sold myself, and because of who I am. I was 22 years old, so I was young. And I ended up going through 7 interviews to get the job that I am in now. I met the principal at Larson, I met the principal at Baker, and then I ended up getting the interview at Bolin, and that's where the job opening was. So I've got that job, and I've been in that building ever since.
Did you always want to do middle school, or was that just where the job was?
So glad you asked me that question. When I was in college, elementary school, and my dad kind of talked me into elementary school. Elementary school was what I wanted. I was going to teach little kids. I had my first pre-teaching scenario at a private school in first grade. And I went, and the very first day I went, I had little kids tugging on me and pulling on me. And I went home that day and I looked at my dad and I said, I can't teach elementary school. This is not what I want to do. And he's like, yes, it is. You would be so good at teaching little kids. And I'm like, I don't think that's what I'm cut out to do. And that's when I changed my mind. And that was when I decided on the math major and that I wanted to teach at least middle school age kids.
Okay. And so you started teaching in 86, right?
Yep.
And so I was born in 95. So how was teaching then? How has it changed? Obviously technology has improved, but what was it like walking into that classroom on the first day and kind of looking back on it now?
I think like the first day of every year there's a lot of anticipation and excitement and anxiety. And I was so excited to have a job, and I just got married like 2 weeks after I got my job. So that was new to me too. That first day I taught 6th grade. The first year I taught 6th grade reading and 6th grade math. And yeah, you go in and you learn what you learn in student teaching, and then it's all yours and you're all alone. And you figure it out. It was exciting. My start days now are very different from what they were then. Like I needed to establish respect in my classroom then because I was young and I looked young. And at this point, with a lot of wisdom and, a lot of first days, you kind of figure out that the kids need to see you as a person in order to really respect who you are and want to be able to do the very best that they can do in your class.
So what was the move back then, 1986? You're just coming in with the ruler, just smacking kids around, or what?
No, you just, you come in and
all the lefties were getting their left hands swatted.
Yeah. No corporal punishment there. Yep. 1986 on, there was none of that. You can't touch the kids, right? I mean, they high five me all the time in the hallway, but that's pretty much it. Every once in a while you'll get a hug, and then it's instigated by the kids. But even when you put your hand on their shoulder, you just got to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Going in that first day, just, dressing professionally and just having that, you look like you know what you're doing kind of thing, but you really don't, because you don't. That first day, you don't know what's going on. The first year, you're figuring so much out. And, having kids ask you to go to the bathroom, that's a question you have to think about. Like, you can't just say yes. Now we kind of are encouraged to just, okay, yeah, you can't say no. You got to let them go. But there are so many things that you have to think about when it comes to, and so many decisions that you make in the course of a school day, that you really do have to give everything a little bit of thought. I just wanted them to know the rules. I wanted to know that I had rules. Now we kind of make rules together. We want to establish an environment that everybody's comfortable with. And again, you learn that as you go along, and you get some
Yeah,
experience.
the kids know too. Like they know when you're like a newer teacher versus like somebody who's, like I remember anytime we'd have like a new, especially a younger teacher, at some point you're like, all right, it's the newer teacher, she's younger or he's younger. And then you just kind of see, like, you try to test them, and not even like you're not even trying to do anything bad, but you're just trying to test the rules or authority, see
Yeah.
what you can get away with, kind of thing, right? So it's interesting because like the teacher's kind of coming in as like, all right, this is new. I gotta set these rules, these boundaries, and all this thing. And then like the kids are same thing, like this teacher's new. Let me see what I can get away with, or at least when I was younger. Do you think that the younger kids now versus like when you first started, I mean, there's a difference because there's different times of the year, different generations and stuff, but are they coming in? Is there a little bit more, like, how is it now? Like the respect coming in, do you find it similar? Like, okay, they're this age, so it's kind of the same as it was back then, or is there a little bit different way that they come in?
That's a good question. I would say, first of all, Troy is a community that has a very high regard for education. So the kids are at home expected, they have very high expectations from their parents. And I would say, like, from then to now, our district has become quite a bit more culturally diverse than it was in 1986. And the cultures that the cultures here in Troy, I would say all of them, parents expect a lot from their kids, and they expect a lot from their kids' teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, I would say that teachers are pretty respected in Troy by the students. That's not the way it is
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, because it really kind of depends on the importance of education.
And in the house,
Yeah, and in the house,
absolutely.
and the education level of the parents in the house as well, and what their experiences were like in school.
Yeah,
Because if they didn't
like,
have good experiences,
yeah,
they're thinking their kids aren't going to get great experiences either.
yeah, they might not even have, especially like, so in '86, you could have had, my dad came over from a different country, so he didn't have like education like that, right? So I'm speaking like from his standpoint, he wanted us to be, go to school, get an education, and that's the reason why, me and my cousin, like, we didn't even like really, I mean, you kind of entertained it, but we didn't really have any desire to take over the bakery and kind of keep that going, because he always would try to like keep it separate. Like, you don't want to work like this, you don't want to do this. Go get an education; it's important. But then at the same time, he never went through that, so it was up to my mom to kind of like make sure that she's instilling like these kind of like, you gotta do your homework, you gotta keep up with those kinds of things, to where it didn't really get away. Because I know like some of my other friends at that time too, same thing, like a first generation, because Troy, very diverse. So we had like, okay, my friends, their parents, same thing, foreigners, they come here, and if they'd had their own businesses, and they didn't have like kind of that education background, they wanted the kids to go through the education and do, go through that system and do good, and not necessarily, run a business that they are, because they wanted like a better life for their kid. But then you'd see like they didn't have that, because they weren't, maybe because they didn't go through, especially in America, like the education system here, it's just, you can get away with a lot more. You can kind of fall through the cracks a little bit more of like not really performing your best, because you come home and they're not used to like, okay, this is, they didn't know, like the parents didn't really know what was going on in the school for the most part, or what was kind of expected. So I found like, and then I have friends that their parents were educated, and you see that there's a lot more structure, a lot more expected. And so I was witnessing both. I'm like, okay, so and so actually, they can't, hang out right now because they have to finish their homework. Where it's like, let's say me, I kind of get away with things and say, yeah, my homework is done. And then, it's kind of like, okay, they take my word for it, but they wouldn't really check into
Yeah.
it. So I can see how, especially like back then, probably, a lot more, when it is like a situation where maybe the household of parents, the education factor there plays a role too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that is a really important factor in our job as teachers is the story helps us, like the story of the child. And it helps us to decide how much we need to monitor. If we don't know certain things, then we can only do so much. But the more we know, sometimes we don't want to know everything, but the more we know, sometimes the more we can focus on on the details that we need to do for each individual kid to help them. And, just to kind of go back to the idea of, education versus not, like your dad's job was super important, and I'm sure he was a super hard worker, running the bakery and everything. And I think that we need to make sure as we move forward in education that we stress the importance of those things and the importance of vocational jobs versus college education, because it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody to further their education at a university. I think it's important. I mean, people that are, doing heating and cooling and mitigation and plumbing and all of those trades are so important. And we've lost focus on that.
Big time.
Yeah. Because those we have major shortages of.
Yeah, it was kind of
shortages of those people.
Like it was kind of, in a sense, a little discouraged. Like when I was going through that. So when I was getting ready to graduate, they're like, no, it was always like, you want to be, business with a finance or accounting. You want to be an engineer, nursing, like teacher. And then obviously if you aspire to be like in the medical field or something. So there's like those technical degrees, but if you wanted to go to trade school, everyone's like, yeah, you don't want to do that. You want better for your life, but it's just funny because it comes full. You see it now. You're like, these trade business people that work in the trades,
they're doing great,
doing great.
Yeah,
and it's a great skill to learn. You can take it anywhere. So yeah, I agree. Like not everybody fits in that box of going to university and going down quote unquote a traditional path of post high school education.
All right, so briefly you were talking about kind of getting comfortable in the classroom, like how at first you weren't comfortable. At what point or how long did it take you to realize that you were good at teaching, and that how long did it take you to get comfortable?
I would say like probably 5 or 6 years to get really comfortable. And then I like your question about good at teaching. And I kind of dipped on this earlier, but I can always be better. So I love what I do, and I have always loved what I do. I don't always love the things that go along with my job that are not directly student related, like, planning and meetings and legislative requirements and things like that. But I think that like when you truly love what you do, and you hear this all the time, you don't work a day in your life. So I really try to instill that in my students too. I would say, like, for me to say I'm really good at what I do, it was probably midway into my career, like maybe even like a dozen years in, where it's like, I'm good at what I do. But again, every hour of every day, I have 5 classes I teach every day. I walk out of one class, I go out into the hallway to do hall duty, and my mind is spinning about what I can do to make the next hour better. So I just feel like I'm always trying to get better at what I do and to make it more engaging and more fun for my kids, because I like to make sure that they're having fun learning, because I feel like when you're having fun learning, just like a job, it's so much better, and it makes you passionate about it. So
how has the act of getting better at teaching changed over the course of 38 years? Like in terms of professional development resources, stuff like that.
So in my first 10 years, I was working on my master's degree. So I had my master's degree plus 30 credit hours beyond that. And would I say that made me a lot better at teaching? Probably not a lot better. I would say that conversations with my colleagues are probably, and observing my colleagues in action is one of the best ways to get better, or in any job. When you're watching somebody that does a good job and you know that they do a good job at what they're doing, you learn from them. I've learned so much from the teachers that I work with over the years, and not even math teachers, like um, English teachers from, that were original to the building that I taught in. Just conversations with them and observation. One of the classes in my master's program that I think I learned the most from was a peer coaching class. And I took it with one of my colleagues that I actually work with in Troy, or she's retired now, but I worked with in Troy. And we took the class together, and part of the class was to go in and observe each other and videotape yourself teaching and critique, and you're sitting down with them critiquing your own teaching and everything. I think I learned the most from that class, and any of the master's classes that I took, that was the best. I think people are afraid to do that sometimes. We're talking about that right now, and how we can, first of all, time is an issue. When you're teaching and you have one class period that you have off, so fourth hour is my prep right now, I could go into any other fourth hour class and watch somebody teach that hour, and they'd welcome me into their room to come in and see. But I'm limited to who I can see at that point, and I'm taking up time where I need to send emails and call parents and check papers and do plans and that type of thing. So time is an issue. Time is the biggest factor with, I think, becoming better, and probably at any job, but teaching for sure. Professional development,
I didn't mean professional development in the strict, continuing ed, whatever you need for your job thing. I just meant that in the terms of literally developing yourself professionally.
Yeah. So we just adopted a new curriculum in math, and it was very controversial in our district because it's not like the traditional, it's not the traditional approach to teaching. I think that there are a lot of really good things that come along with this new curriculum. A lot of really good thinking, deep thinking for the kids, and them trying to figure things out on their own. But when it comes to like the delivery, us being properly trained in the delivery has been a challenge. So again, time is an issue. Observation is I think the best tool is to find somebody that is good at what they're doing, and go in and observe and have conversations with them and see how you can get better.
How has the profession of teaching changed over the course of your 38 years?
Well, COVID's in there.
All right, let's split it up into the first 35 years or whatever, 34 years, and then post-COVID.
A lot more collaboration. So I would say that when I first started teaching, your kids were pretty much working independently. Like, I was lecturing, I was showing them how to do something, they were practicing. And it works, it does work when you teach kids how to do something, unless they have challenges. And if they have challenges, then you have to, you've got to figure out some other ways to help them get over those obstacles. But for an average kid to go in and be shown how to do something mathematically and then practice it and practice it and practice it, they can do it. Right. And over the course of the years, our society has become more of a collaboration type environment in a lot of different settings and a lot of jobs. So I think that starting to lean towards having kids work in teams and having them do, investigations together, having them try to dig deeper and think on their own more, as opposed to spoon feeding them information. And when you figure something out on your own, you're going to remember it, right? So I think that it's changed over the course of time that way, probably most profoundly.
All right. And actually, we got to do post-COVID now. So how has teaching changed the last 2-3 years?
So COVID dropped the ball on everybody, right? So I think that I'm sitting right here, right now, where I sat and taught my kids for almost 2 years. And that was a challenge. Like that being a teacher is such a relationships job. It's everything that I started thinking about when you asked me to do this was relationship, everything about teaching. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I just thought of everything relationship related. I'm not thinking about lesson plans and meetings and all of those things. And having a relationship with somebody behind a screen is very different from having a relationship with them in a classroom. So it was a challenge. I know it was a challenge for parents too. It was very hard to have your kid sit behind a screen all day long and not fall asleep. I know I had kids sleeping. I got to a point where it wasn't worth a fight for me to say, will you turn your video on so I can see you? Because some kids were sitting in their beds in their pajamas with their hair a mess and they didn't want everybody to see them that way. They were just trying to get through. And so that was a total learning curve for all of us. And a lot of people had a hard time with the technology aspect of it too. But we figured it out. Coming back from COVID, the hardest thing was social maturity. And when we first came back, the first year, the first 3 months were really hard. Kids did not know how to behave in a public setting. And my classroom, our building is not a place where you see fights happen very often. My first 2 weeks of school, I had 2 kids get in a fight in my classroom because one kid touched the other one's pencil case. And they didn't have to share anything. They didn't share anything when they were going through that. They were in their rooms, locked in their rooms, doing their work and watching a screen. And the social aspect was really hard. So I think we're getting beyond that at this point. There's still a little bit of immaturity that we're working on and they're working on, and some gaps that still have to be filled because yes, everybody's a little bit behind, but I think those gaps are getting filled in now. But, you got to teach your curriculum and then you got to teach, these guys missed this, so you're throwing things in that, that was something that they should have learned in 6th grade and they were in their bedrooms in 6th grade. So that was a challenge, but, the social aspect is it's getting better. And then I would say, are we close to back to like pre-COVID? Probably pretty close to that. And again, collaboration, a lot of group work and lessons that are structured on investigation and exploration instead of your typical lecture stuff.
All right. So when the district told you, all right, everybody's going to be teaching from home, you had 35 years or whatever on at that point. How close were you to just saying, all right, I'm good. I'm going to retire now?
I had friends that did that made it through the couple months that we had to get through the end of the year. And they're like, I can't, I'm done. I can't do this. I was pretty comfortable with the teaching from home and doing what I needed to do here, except for that one time that I forgot to get out of bed and I got a phone call from my principal saying, hey, Jen, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you've got kids on Zoom waiting for you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no snow days that year.
No snow days that year. In fact, we thought they would be a thing of the past. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready financially. And I mean, at 30 years, I can get my full pension. So I'm way beyond that at this point. And then my second goal was, hey, my dad taught 37 years. So let me at least get to that point. So I've beat him now. And I just wanted to match him. But I needed to give it a little bit more time. I'm getting there. I'm getting close. Not going to be this year, but it's not going to be too far off.
I believe that. So how have kids changed in the course of the 38 years? And then my next question will be, how have parents changed? So if you want to loop those in together.
Okay. Can I start with the parents?
You can do what you want.
Okay. All right. So I'll start with the parents because I think that as a parent, everybody wants the best for their kids. And we don't always agree that on the same things, right? Not every parent raises their kid the same way. So knowing that parents go into sending their kids to school every day, they're trusting us. They're trusting us with their most precious commodity, and they expect us to, to deliver on what their expectations are. And they're not always the same when it comes across the board to every parent. So with that being said, I don't think that parents have changed a whole lot over the course of the 38 years that I've been teaching. I've had some very difficult situations with parents, and I mean, for the most part, my job is to educate their children and to do everything I possibly can to help their kids reach their highest potential. So that's my goal. And we might not always agree on things, but I always try to come at it from a team perspective. And I think when you do that, you end up with more people on your side than you end up with against you. When it comes to kids, kids are kids. I don't know how much kids have changed over the course. Yeah, there are some changes. When I started, kids didn't play video games like they play now. That's probably one of the biggest distractions is they all have technology. So they all have their iPhones. They didn't have that when I started teaching. It's the biggest distraction ever is for a kid to have a phone in school. I don't allow them in my classroom. So they can have them, but they can't have them out. They can't be on them. They have their iPads. We use their iPads on a regular basis for educational purposes. And for the most part, the school district does what they can to keep them secure from, going places that they shouldn't be going when they're in school. They shouldn't be gaming or anything. They should be doing educational things. So that's probably the biggest distraction. But I'm a relationship person. So I feel like when you take the time to build a good learning environment for kids and to build that relationship with them, they're going to perform. They're going to do what they can do to, to be their best selves. And kids are resilient, they can bounce back from things. So when we talk about kids being way behind from COVID, it's nobody's fault and everybody's in the same position. Every kid is behind a little bit, so we're filling in those gaps. And I don't know. I don't think that there's been a big amount of change when it comes to how they respect us as teachers, and I don't know.
It's kind of like the technology and just like that evolving. Because like I remember, this is in high school. I couldn't get one until I really couldn't get one at all. But I snuck one. I got it was probably like sophomore year or junior year. I got a pager, a beeper. I don't know. Carlos probably never seen one.
I've seen beepers before.
But like that was like we didn't have the teachers didn't have to deal with like because I can only imagine like the phones and tablets and stuff in classes. Like if I had that, I would have probably been raised with this, would have been a little bit different. But I was thinking, I'm like, man, if I had that, I probably would not. I'd be terrible because I would just be so distracted, or trying to like figure out how to like, use a phone or just not do what I'm supposed to do in class. Yeah. So limiting the distractions is huge. But then again, they grow up with this being, a kid knows they know how to use the iPhone or like an iPad, like kind of right away. As a kid, you just learn this stuff. So it's a little bit more normal for them, but it's interesting.
And everything evolves. So I think that kids now have very different distractions than kids had in 1986 and when I was a kid. So those distractions just change, and I'm sure they will continue to change over time. Mm-hmm.
All right, so the next question, this one gets a little bit deeper. How has teaching impacted your parenting, and how has parenting impacted your teaching?
So it has both ways for sure impacted both being a parent and a teacher. So I was a teacher first, right? So I will say, and this kind of goes back to your question about when do you feel like you became a good teacher or good at what you do? I definitely became a better teacher after I became a mom. You experiences change who you are, and becoming a parent, you have very different experiences than you have when you're not a parent. So seeing your kids go through struggles and knowing that some of those kids that are sitting in your classroom are going through some of those same struggles. Just yesterday, I had a girl that I had to talk to several times because she was very distracted. And I said, will you stay after class for a minute so we can talk? She stayed. And I said, is tomorrow going to be better? Because you were like not on task today. And she's like, my dog died. So if you don't know those things, then you definitely react differently. So once I became a parent, you understand the amount, how busy families are. Kids are very involved in after school. In Troy, my kids are busy every day after school doing something. My students, they're playing sports, or they're doing an instrument, or they're in a club, or whatever it might be. They might have an extra class that they're taking. We have a lot of ELL learners, English as a second language learner. So, we have kids that are trying to learn the language. There are so many things that you have to take into consideration. And I just think that once you are experiencing some of those things yourself, you're seeing how hard it is for a child with test anxiety to go to school on the day that they're having a test. And, I've got kids that miss days of tests because they need more time to prepare, or because they get anxious and they don't know how they're going to perform, and they're worried about it. Was it? Yeah.
I do so good, perform with everything, and then test anxiety comes up
yeah.
I just would shut down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to get a stomach ache or something. Yeah.
That happened in my house, and I think that once you experience that, it helps you to empathize a little bit more with people that, that it's real. It's real. It's real stuff. And I think that sometimes people that don't have kids don't understand how real it really is, And then when it comes to how did it affect me as a parent? Well, there were some parents that I had to deal with over the course of the years where it was like, I am not going to be that kind of a parent with my kid. I had high expectations for my kids, but they weren't expected to get all A's. They might have done that to themselves, but for me, it was like, just do the best you can do. And we go from there. And so being like that, we have a lot of tiger moms in Troy. And, if you are not number one, I've had kids say to me before, if you're not number one in my house, like if you are not in the number one position, the number one chair in violin, or, the top student in the classroom, it's not good enough. And there's so much pressure that drives mental health when it comes to that really becomes an issue. So, it affected me because you see kids that do certain things, and, that you don't want your own kids to be that way, or you want your kids to be that way. And it's like, hey, I'm gonna maybe take some tips from these people,
How do you see the teaching profession continuing to evolve after you are out of it?
It's always been an evolution. It's very fluid. It's a very, very fluid profession. So it will continue to change. It's got to continue to change with the times. And there are certain things that, that maybe I'm not ready to be a part of, that's going to be my driving force of, okay, I think I'm done, just because I would have to have a whole new set of skills to be able to do certain things. And I'd rather take my energy and, spend some time in retirement doing some other stuff that might, use some of that same energy. But it will continue to evolve into something that is going to accommodate our society, and the needs that we have in our working world, to make sure that we're preparing kids for the right kind of jobs, and to be good humans and all that stuff.
How do you see AI impacting teaching, like with ChatGPT and all that stuff?
I know that that's a bigger concern, probably. I don't know about concern, but a bigger talking point among our like language arts teachers and our social studies teachers as opposed to math. I know kids can get a lot of stuff about math on on the World Wide Web. But I would like to hope that it can be turned into something that benefits education as opposed to hindering things. There's a difference between plagiarizing and using something to help you learn to get better. So I hope that that's the route that it takes. I don't think we're gonna have a choice, right? I think that's the way that we're headed.
So when I was in school, this wasn't really in middle school, because I think middle school math tends to be a little bit more applicable to life. But in my ever knowing wisdom as a high schooler, I thought that pretty much all the math we learned was useless, like algebra, pre-calc, all that stuff. And I made that abundantly clear to my teachers that I thought they were wasting all of our times and that their entire profession was useless. So how do you deal with those kind of students?
With the Carloses.
Yeah.
And Mike's.
Yeah.
Algebra.
Well, and Kirk's. I mean, that's my husband's perspective too when it comes to that. Yeah, it's like find X. It's right here.
What
do you want me to do with it, right?
Why do I need to learn all this?
Yeah.
I still have never used a log of anything, a sign of anything.
Business math was amazing. This is practical.
Yeah, like stats. I liked stats.
But then all my engineering friends, I mean, obviously like algebra, calculus, so it's very important for that.
Yeah.
So it's
for sure. So obviously there are certain careers that require a lot of math. I have kids that I have to deal with like that all the time. Usually in the first month or two of school, and then they kind of subside those thoughts. Maybe it's because of my response to them when they first ask me things like that. Maybe not.
Just heavy-handed with the ruler.
Yeah.
Straighten them out.
I try to be pretty honest with them. Obviously, there is basic math that we use on a regular basis, right? We should be teaching kids how to do their taxes and how to do a budget for their household and that type of thing. Those things are really important to be good contributing members of society and to do your job as an adult, as a citizen. I teach algebra, I teach geometry, and I have taught Algebra 2 for many years. I don't have an Algebra 2 class.
Geometry is fun.
Yeah. And it's
yeah.
So totally different parts of the brain. Like and I tell the kids that too. And I also, I think one of the best scenarios for me to use is learning how to solve quadratic equations.
Sounds super applicable to everyday life.
So there are 5 ways to solve a quadratic equation. Okay. One of them works 100% of the time. So why wouldn't you just use that? Right.
I feel like Googling would work 100% of the time too. So there might be 6.
Desmos, that's the new thing, right?
Ask my brother.
Graph calculator. I am a true believer that learning math helps us to develop skills that are way outside of the math world. I feel like it helps to develop our logical thinking skills. I feel that it helps us to develop our problem solving skills, whether it's a math problem or not, being reasonable and rational human beings. So going back to that quadratic, solving quadratics, this is a scenario that I use for my students. And so we learn how to solve quadratics in our 5 different ways. And the way that works 100% of the time takes the longest if the other methods will work. So if you can recognize, this is going to work for this particular situation and it's going to take me 2 seconds to do it, I'm going to use this method. It's helping you to choose a way to do something in life, maybe not math, maybe not quadratics, to do something where you're working smarter, not harder. And if I am, because a lot of my kids go into the medical field, a lot of my students go in the medical field. So I say, if one of you guys is my doctor one of these days, and I go in and I'm bleeding out, and you choose to use the quadratic formula to save my life when factoring would work, I'm going to bleed out on your table. And I want to make sure that you are able to make a rational decision in the heat of a moment that it might be hard for you to make a rational decision. So that's kind of one of my spiels with them when it comes to that uselessness of math. Because
I would have been like, but what if I'm not a doctor?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
I would have flushed it back on a little bit, like,
well, what if? Right. So, but anything that you're doing, as a police officer,
absolutely,
I never solved a quadratic equation on the street.
You have to make decisions. You have to make decisions in the heat of the moment. And I just feel like I feel like going through those experiences, whether it's math or not, you're still learning, you're still learning how to make good judgments and good decisions based on several things that you know. That's another thing that's changed over the course of my teaching career. And this just popped in my head is when I started teaching in 1986, we did not have to get trained in how to run an active shooter drill. And that is something that is a part of every day that we go to school. And, this bucket that's sitting in the corner of my room that has all kinds of little supplies in it to help me chain my door shut and that type of thing. Do we do a good job at it? We can do way better than we do when it comes to training our students, not just to what to do in our building if we have a situation, but what to do if they're in the mall or what to do if they're in the movie theater, whatever. And there's a dangerous situation. When I was growing up, we had air raid drills because there was war, right? I mean, Vietnam was going on at the time. I mean, it was obviously not here, but still we had air raid drills, we had tornado drills, and we had fire drills. Those were our drills. Yeah. And now we have active shooter drills.
How often do you do those?
I think we have 3 active shooter drills scheduled for a school year. And they kind of graduate in intensity each time we do one. So the kids always know that it's a drill. So it's not like fire drills and tornado drills. Those are surprise. We're having one, but an active shooter drill, it's always, you guys, we're having a drill tomorrow. We want you to know that it's not the real thing. But it's still anxiety provoking to go through the motions, and nobody should have to go through those motions,
And so what do you guys do for those? Is it just lock the doors and huddle up in the far side corner away from the door?
Yeah. So we lock the doors. We actually have, they put night locks on our doors. So
those are nice.
Yeah. So we have every kid practice using the night lock. So it's on the wall. They pull it out, they put it in. I don't have them do that during the drill. I have them do that like at another time because it's time consuming. And then whoever sits closest to the door kind of just does it during the drill. So we do that. I have a curtain that I can pull. My doors are glass. Okay. So I don't know how great the night lock is, but it's a deterrent, I guess. We have magnet strips that we can put on our doors. Our doors are supposed to be locked all the time. But we have magnet strips that we can put over in case that we need to have it open for whatever reason so we can get in and out of our classroom.
Your doors are locked during school? Mm-hmm. See, that was not like the case when I went to school.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always open. So that's interesting.
We can leave our doors open, but we are not supposed to use our key to keep them unlocked during the day. So that if we abruptly have to lock our door, we can slide the magnet up and pull the door. So the magnet goes quicker over the, the apparatus that's in the door jamb. And then, we have the kids that the silence is essential. We have them when we've done our drills so far this year, we haven't had them move yet, like out of sight. Because knowing that it's a drill, but we actually pick a scenario. So, okay, the active shooter is in the media center. What do? We leave this building because I'm in like the farthest corner of the building, not by the media center. So that's what we're teaching them right now is that if we know the status of the location of the danger and we are in a location to leave the building, that's what we do. We leave. And if not, I mean, we tell them about throwing things, you know, you throw a stapler, throw a book. If somebody comes in, we deter them, because if they're going to be deterred, they're more likely to move on to, you know,
less resistance.
Yeah.
Just something that's easier targets.
Yeah.
If you were offered, I don't know, let's make it a decent sized number, like 10 grand to carry in your classroom, would you do it?
Absolutely not.
What's your thoughts on that? With the requisite training, of course.
Right. I'm not a fan of guns, period. I've been to the shooting range. I've shot guns. I can do it. I can hit the target and everything. It's not something that I ever thought would be a part of even a question of me having to carry in my classroom. I have a hard time because teachers are human beings too. And a lot of times, you know, kids don't think of us as human beings until we let them think of us that way, until we build that relationship and they see us vulnerable and everything. But being a human being means that you experience any kind of emotion at any time, right? And I am certain that there are people out there that are in the classroom that might have the right training and everything, and have a gun on their hip and have a kid acting out in class and say, you better be careful. You know, you can't trust everybody's judgment 100% of the time. And why
use a gun when a nice 3-foot long ruler will work, you know?
That's right. You know what? If it's my time, it's my time, and I'm going to do everything I can to protect my students from that. And I know that, you know, there are a lot of people out there that think that me having a gun might help in that situation, but it's not a part of who I am.
Is that allowed for teachers? You guys know they can't carry?
No.
Yeah, right.
No, okay. But I know there's been conversation about, you know.
I know they're trying to get.
Yeah.
Because right now they have like a liaison, right? Police liaison.
Yes.
Every school. That's okay.
Yep.
I don't think it's at Troy. It's probably not at every school.
The high schools have them. Yeah, the high schools have them. We have a police liaison, but he's not there all the time. Okay. At the high school, they have access to police liaison. I think it's his job.
He has an office.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like an office at Athens.
Yeah, but I see, I think it's Officer Jones every week he walks by my classroom, waves. He's not there during the whole school day, but we have him. We also have a hall monitor that walks around our building all the time, and, you know, makes sure that he's got a great relationship with all the kids. He makes sure things are good. He doesn't carry or anything, but just having that presence and that person, I think, is helpful.
Are the kids, especially at that, so in middle school, are they aware? I mean, I know they know what's happening, but how much on the mind is it of like, you know, active shooters potentially, like, kind of, because especially in Michigan, it's hit close to Troy.
Yeah,
you know,
Oxford for sure.
Yeah.
I think that my own impression of it is probably that they think about it when we do drills.
Okay.
And they probably don't think about it on a regular basis unless one of their classmates is doing something that's questionable when it comes to searching or drawings or whatever. I think that always triggers what happened in Oxford. But I think for the most part, kids are very resilient. And, you know, if it's not happening, it was close to home, and it was, and same with Michigan State. Those were very, very traumatic events in our building as well. You know, you have people, one of our teachers, her daughter was there when it happened in Oxford.
Everybody knows somebody.
So it does hit close to home. So I think when it hits close to home, you start thinking about it a little bit more. And when we do drills, you think about it a little bit more, but they have to be prepared, you know?
And so you kind of hinted at this a couple times already, but at what point will you call it done?
Okay, so going back to your question you just asked me, if somebody tells me I have to carry, I'm going to say bye, I'm done. And not just because of the weapon thing, just because if I have to do that, I don't want to be there anymore.
That would be a very fundamental change to the job.
Yeah.
You go from educator to protector at that point.
So.
Right.
Want,
yeah, exactly.
Firearm person.
I've always felt like I've had to be a protector of the heart. You know, I carry my kids' worries home with me. When I know things that they're going through, it comes home. It's challenging to carry their weight sometimes. Mm. When will I be done? So I told you we were getting a new curriculum. I haven't had to teach out of it yet. That's going to happen in 2026.
That would be the 40-year mark.
So that would be the beginning of 2026, which would mean I would be finishing my 39th year. So I'd be done.
They're going to do it in the middle of a school year?
No. So it'll be September of 2026 when my curriculum changes. So our 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade regular math curriculum has already changed. I teach algebra, geometry, algebra 2. So that's not slated to change until September of 2026. So what that means for me, and I've never been afraid of learning. I've never been afraid of starting something new, but it means that I have to redo everything that I have done with the curriculum that I'm currently teaching. So we'd be leaving that behind, starting new. And it really is a very different way, which I already practiced some of the methodology methodology. Thank you, Carlos. The methodology that goes hand in hand with the new curriculum. But that could be a contributing factor, which would be to 100% go into the new material.
And what are your retirement plans?
I do quite a bit of tutoring now. And I really enjoy tutoring. I love the one-on-one. The kids that I tutor really want to learn and they want to get better. So I enjoy that. So as long as I continue with a clientele, I mean, obviously that changes over because I pretty much tutor. I like to tutor what I teach, like algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. So as long as I can continue to build a clientele with that, I will, because I can make my own schedule. So I would continue tutoring, and then I would also, I'm, if I retire next year, I'll be 61 years old. Hopefully still have a lot of life left in me. I do fear that leaving my profession will help me age a little bit quicker because I feel like my kids help keep me young. And you guys know what shipping is?
I mean, besides like
shipping and receiving,
like logistics.
Well, that's what my question was.
Yeah, besides logistics.
Yeah, my kids asked me this a couple weeks ago. Mrs. Taylor, you know what shipping is? I'm like, yeah, like shipping a package. Mm-hmm. And oh no, it's like when you are trying to matchmake and you're relationshiping kids. So you're trying to help kids get into a relation, or your friends get into a relationship. You're playing matchmaker. Yeah. So that's what shipping means. So, they keep me abreast on these new lingo, on the new lingo.
Wait, how
shipping.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
though?
I know. It's like, are you shipped?
We've learned a lot of weird things lately at the gym. So
yeah. Oh. Even with my nephew, I use terminology that I would use when I was younger. Like he's a basketball player at Utica, and me and my cousin were talking, and my cousin was really good at basketball when we were younger, and I was like, because your Uncle Z used to blaze when he played basketball. He's good. We'd use it as Tara, do really good, right? Uh-huh. And he's like, blaze. What does that even mean? He's like, what are you talking about right now? So it's just funny that he's just like, yeah, it's way old school. I'm like, whoa. That's a reminder.
I mean, you are 40. So.
Yeah. But that's not,
so they
try to be hip with it.
Right, exactly.
Shipping. Now I'm gonna take
You're
it
going to
him.
use it, yeah.
So
ask him if he's shipped.
Yeah, you shipped?
Yeah. That means you're in a relationship. Yeah. So that was new to me. But yeah, they, I feel like they help keep me young and
I really thought that's what you were saying was going to be a retirement plan. I didn't think that you were talking about them
getting
keeping
shipped?
No, that you were going to be like matchmaking in retirement. I thought that's what you were going with it.
No, I don't plan on that. But no, so possibly tutoring or probably tutoring, and then if I do feel like I have to have a purpose. I'd like to volunteer a little bit. We have friends that have a farm in Detroit, and they have a lot of inner city kids come in, and they take care of the animals. So they do like a 4-H program there. They show animals at the county fair. They're talking about starting up a learning kitchen, and I love to cook. So, that might be something that I would like to get involved in. So maybe a little bit of volunteering. And if I need some extra income, I mean, I get a decent retirement with a pension with my retirement. But if I need a little extra income, I feel like I'll do something totally unrelated to education. Like maybe work at a gift shop or come up with something on my own.
I know a guy who owns a gift shop on Drummond Island, so
yeah,
could work there.
Maybe I'll spend some more time on Drummond Island too.
What is Drummond Island?
So that's the UP right there. So
off the eastern tip of the Upper
right
Peninsula.
Okay.
So you get on a ferry, take a mile across the St. Mary's River, and Drummond Island is in the middle. It's like in Lake Huron.
So it's like a different state.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
It's almost we get Canadian reception on our cell
like
phones
who
up
claims
there.
it? Like Michigan
it's
claims
Michigan.
it.
It's Michigan. Yeah.
I know like the UP, like Wisconsin tries to claim it a lot. There's like a lot of non-Lion fans up there. I was like,
yeah, they're Green Bay.
Yeah, so I was like, this isn't Michigan. When I was young, I was like, this is not.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Let's see. Got a few more teacher-related questions. So what are the most important aspects of success for teachers? Like what will make a teacher successful?
Knowing that our students have found something to be passionate about and to, make a difference in the world. I think that just helping them be successful is a reflection of our own success. I got a note this past year from a student who I wasn't in the building the day that she came in, and I walked into school the next day, and there was a note that was on my desk all folded up, and I found it, and it was a girl that I had probably 6 years ago, and maybe even longer than that because she's actually done with college, so probably more like 8 years ago. And her dad was really sick the year that I had her, and she was actually in a lower level math class, and the letter that she wrote me, I had no idea like the impact that I made on her just by caring and letting her know that I believed in her and that I thought that she could, that she could do this. You can do this math. And knowing that her dad was sick, just checking in on her and saying, hey, how are you doing? Like, I had no idea that I was the only person that asked her how she was doing. And she actually has a career in math right now.
Oh,
and, so seeing that come back is like, those are the moments of success.
For sure. And my sister, she's a teacher. So what advice would you give for a young teacher who's in their first or second year of teaching?
So I think that especially now, teachers get burned out really easily, especially at the beginning of their career, because there are a lot of things that you have to do, a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. And I guess my biggest thing is if you love it, stick with it. And then starting salaries for teachers are tough. I think that hopefully will change because there's been a lot of our education budget in Michigan is like historic right now. So we're going to see some changes for the good when it comes to recruiting teachers and paying them better starting off. I get a pretty good salary being a 38-year veteran, but I've been teaching for 38 years to make what I make now. Teachers that are just starting we're not doing any different. We don't have a different workload, so stick with it. And, if you love it, stick with it. If you find that you don't, then it's probably not for you. But your rewards come in a lot of other ways other than financial, but definitely, teachers need to be paid. They need to be paid a living wage and, be able to pay their student loans off. And, especially when they're starting. I know that some of the new budget is dedicated towards helping teachers pay some of their student loans off, like a monthly stipend or something. And I think it's higher if they're teaching in a more underprivileged area.
Gotcha. And I know you said earlier that your dad was trying to steer you away from teaching. Would you recommend the job right now?
So I think both of my kids would have been great teachers, it was not something that I steered them towards. If they would have really wanted to do it, I would have definitely given them my okay. And it doesn't really matter anyway, because I think that you've got to do what you love. But I think that if teachers really, or people really want to go into that field, absolutely. But it is a lot of work. You can't go into it thinking that, I'm going to do it because I get the summer off, and I'm going to, because now there's not even a pension. So when I went into it, that was one of the things that my dad was like, well, there's a pension, you will be able to have good time with your family when it comes to summers and that type of thing. But you don't get paid through the summer. You don't get paid in the summer. So I think that's a huge misconception from a lot of people is teachers get paid in the summer. No, we don't. We get paid for our 9 months of work. You might choose to have your pay spread out over the summer, but you're not getting paid for those days for those summer days. Wait, what was the question again? I lost my.
It was just, would you recommend teaching?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I mean, it has been a very rewarding career for me. So when it comes to giving my advice based on how it's been for me, I would say I can't imagine me doing anything other than what I've done. I love my job. I haven't talked much about the adults that I work with, but the teachers that I work with in my building and in our district, and even outside of our district, are just amazing human beings. And I've learned so much about life and about teaching and about relationships through them, that it's been very rewarding. So in that respect, I would say yes, but nobody can go into it thinking it's going to be an easy job, because it's not. You're dealing with a lot of different things. And we have a lot of mental health issues, obviously, in our world right now. And those come into the classroom. You've got to be prepared for dealing with situations that are very difficult.
Individual people,
Yeah.
like it's not, you can't just address the whole class necessarily. It's each person's different. Like you're saying, going through something different, learns at a different rate. There's a lot going on.
And you have parents that I've had like both ends of the spectrum, where I have a child who is struggling, like for example, with Asperger's disease, and you have parents who want to do every single thing and take advantage of every support that public school will offer them. And then you have a child that, has the same, is on the spectrum of autism, and, or whatever the disability may be, or the challenge may be. And because of their culture, they are shamed if they admit to their child having any kind of a challenge, where they will not accept any services. And we're trying to help them with, we can provide you with this and this and this, and they refuse. And that's really difficult, because you're trying to make a difference, and you're trying to help, and you're trying to give support, and it's not accepted. So that definitely can be a cultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I noticed there that you corrected yourself when you were talking about autism. You said you used the word challenge versus disability. Just kind of dive into that a little bit.
I think it's probably more appropriate to use the word challenge, because we all have challenges, and whatever the challenge may be, and maybe being autistic is part of is your challenge, or being deaf in one ear, which is an experience in my own home, is a challenge that someone may have, or having test anxiety is a challenge that someone may have. So kind of corrected myself there, because, Asperger's and autism are just another challenge that, that we try to support and help people to overcome, or at least make it so that, so that that all kids have skills so that they can function in society somehow and somewhere.
How have you seen those challenges be addressed, or how has the response to those challenges changed over the course of your 38 years, I know now there's like, I think IEPs is the word. And then I know that like when I was in school, I went to Saline and they had like the connecting program there, which my sister was involved in. And so they would like help the special needs kids and like walk around with them and stuff. So there was like a big Special Olympics movement over there. So how have you seen that change? Because I'd imagine in '86 there wasn't much of that going on.
Yeah, there wasn't. We had, back when I first started, and for many years, we had a self-contained classrooms that really was where kids that had severe either emotional or struggles that maybe actually identified differently now than they were back then. Those kids were in a contained classroom where they had a teacher and maybe an aide or two in there with them. Now, yes, kids have IEPs. So kids that have any kind of a challenge, whether it could be test anxiety, it could be,
what's IEP?
IEP is an individualized educational plan. So those, an IEP is a legal document for accommodations for those students. So those students might get some special education services. They might get some, they might get some sort of support services. So anyone who has any kind of a diagnosed challenge has an IEP. When it comes to, so we have the Links program in our building in Troy. So it's probably like what did you say it was? Connections? Connecting, probably similar. So we have several kids in our building that we have a classroom for autistic students in our building, and the 8th graders. We have several 8th graders that go there and walk them around the building, and so they're actually helping to socialize, and so we have kids that do that. We also have a lot of 504s. 504 is also a legal document where, let's say that you do, so test anxiety may not be something that's diagnosed. It might be just something that you have, and your parents know you have, and your teachers know you have. And if you can choose to create a 504 for any kind of specific challenge that you might need some accommodations for, those have become very popular in probably the last 10 years or so. So, you can have extended time on tests because you have test anxiety, or kids that might be diagnosed with ADHD. They may need like extensions on deadlines and preferential seating and things like that in the classroom.
Yeah.
Always in the front.
Yeah. Or even I remember in middle school at Larson, they even a couple of times in math class, it was I think her name was Mrs. Shapee.
Oh yeah, I know.
You know her?
Lori
Yeah.
Shapee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a huge classroom, like the way it was set up. It was like kind of like a theater type of setup where so it was really big, and I was struggling with math, and then I was like, I kind of felt like, and it was a new school coming from Warren to Troy, and then I felt like kind of lost in this in that classroom. She was great though. I felt kind of lost, and she noticed, and then she even a couple occasions, I didn't need to do it all the time, but in the beginning, she actually like allowed me to take it like privately. Where she would obviously be there to make sure there's no cheating or whatever going on, but I didn't have to like, okay, the test is this day during class. She would allow me to like come in earlier or later and just do it like like just me by myself, and she was there just making sure everything was good. And for me, I don't know why, it just like I just was able to settle down, and then I kind of got over a little bit of the anxiety. It wasn't like totally gone, but it really helps. Like, okay, it's not that bad,
Yeah.
So it was cool, and I didn't know that was even like a thing,
Yeah. So if you had a 504 being a legal document, if you had that, and then let's say in your junior year of high school, you still had your 504 and you had like extended time for a test, let's say time and a half or something like that, that can be applied also to standardized testing, like your SAT or your ACT test as well. But it has to be established that you've got that documentation and you've got that legal 504 in place.
Like a week before the SAT or whatever, you can't just apply for it.
Can't do it. And it also can carry into college too. So if you have that, I think that maybe that's one of the things that has made it more popular. I would like to think that in my classroom, my kids don't need an IEP, that I'm going to recognize, I don't mean an IEP, I mean a 504, that I'm going to recognize what their needs are. And, I have a student this year who from the very beginning, I'm like, he's going to need some, he's going to need some special attention. And, mom communicated with me back and forth for a month. And I thought, okay, this is going to be like a year-long thing. And it took a month of us working together and her knowing that I was a part of the team. Like I wasn't a part of the problem. I wanted to help him. And that kid has made such gains in my classroom and overall this year. But he doesn't have a 504. And I think as long as we recognize those things and we watch for those things that, it's not always the kid just messing around.
Yeah.
Yep. Sometimes it really is
a challenge.
It really is a challenge. Yeah.
All right. Let me see. Okay. So before I segue off into a different section, I got a quick math question for you.
I haven't been on a roll lately.
Yeah, I know. But I also didn't let you preview this one because I just thought of it. But if you had to do some quick math, how many students would you say that you have taught? Just a rough estimate.
3,500 probably.
Over the course of 38 years?
Yeah.
That was a lot quicker than I thought. That's also a lower number than I thought. I thought it was going to be like 50,000 or something.
No. Because I have
you're not good at math, Carl.
Let me grab my
I have no idea how many. I have no idea how many kids are in each class or whatever.
Is Mrs. Shapi? So I remember, and other teachers would say it was like a thing, but I remember she said to me one time, we were doing this problem, and I'd always want to go to the calculator. She's like, "You're not always gonna have a calculator handy." Yeah, but then it's like fast forward now. I'm like,
now you do. Yeah. Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
So, that was another argument I always had with those teachers.
Yeah.
But I had no idea. Cell phones weren't even a thing, So I was just like, it was like the Zach Morris.
Carry my pocket calculator.
It's actually probably closer to 4,500. Maybe probably between 4,500 and 5,000.
Okay.
Our classroom size is a problem. What's an ideal size classroom for you to think that you can, teach at your best, I guess.
Yeah, so that we're not doing crowd control.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. During my entire career in Troy, 30 has been the max in a math classroom. So maybe when I first started, it was 32, but it's always been right around that 30. Is that too many? I think so. I would say in a math class, I can do it. I can do it with 30 kids in there. I have a class this year my smallest class is 19 kids and my largest class is 28. They're both 28's manageable. Would I do a better job with each individual kid if I had less kids? Yes. So I've got 19 in one class. They definitely have an opportunity to have more one-on-one time with me if they need it. But to me, 25-ish is probably a decent number. And remember, we're in Troy, and other school districts like Detroit. I'm sure that their class sizes are larger.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. Is there a norm?
I've heard people say that they've got 40 kids in their class. That's crowd control. You're probably in a situation where you don't have as much parental support as we do here. So that can be a huge challenge. Yeah, class size is a big thing. We have a very, very strong union in Troy, and that has been something that has always been a big factor, is keeping our class sizes as low as possible.
Mike, did you have any education related questions you wanted to ask?
That one. Let me ask on what would be, so in terms of what you were saying with parents being a part of the whole team, in terms of so the kid, what helps the kid succeed like, so a lot of times, so there's a discussion about, okay, not that I'm saying it was before, but I'm sure there are cases like this, but there's no more like, you can't be as passive as a parent when sending your kid to school and kind of expecting the school to like do their job of, and you not kind of being involved in what's going on, like educational learning, asking questions about, about not only just socially, but just the thing in general about school. So how do you think, is it getting better? Is there more involvement with parents? Do you feel like nowadays being more informed with like technology and being able to connect, or do you think it's kind of the same as it was in like 86 where, you kind of just send your kid to school? Not that, we'd have like the teacher conferences and things like that, but I don't know. I feel like my mom did, like I said, my dad worked a ton. He did, but my mom did a great job of like really, like calling me out on stuff and making sure that I get back on the right path, especially with school, especially at times where I'm like, she did a phenomenal job. But then she wasn't just like send them to school and really don't ask questions. But then I have, family members that their parents kind of like just sent them to school and they just, they didn't really know what was going on. But then you kind of see some things happen there in their education. So I don't know if there's like a way that a parent, like the right or wrong way of how you should kind of pursue like the education with your kid.
Yeah, great question. Um, it's your responsibility as a parent to do your, get educated with your kid. Yes, you've already done that. You've already been educated. You've already gone through you've gone through school. You've done those things. So you don't need to do those things all over again. But it is important for you to ask questions as a parent, for you to support, for you to give space for, a quiet space to get your work done, for you to monitor and make sure that things are getting done, particularly up until they get into their high school years. And I say that, you start letting go a little bit at a time and giving them more freedom. But I think that there was a time when our culture had one working parent, and then the other parent was home doing that work. And our culture isn't that way anymore. We have many homes that have both parents working, and that becomes more of a challenge. And it's not because they don't want to be there, but in some situations they can't be there. And, when you have a family, you kind of buy into that. That's your responsibility. So you got to figure it out somehow, some way. But I have kids. I have kids that have parents that work astronomical hours and they probably don't even see their parents. They're home alone a lot. And there are issues that go along with that. And some of those issues are mental health issues too. And some of those kids get everything done. They get everything done that they need to get done, but they're not feeling all the other emotions that they need to feel when it comes to support and love and guidance and knowing that they have a true support system at home. But I think it's really important for kids to know that they can go to their parents for anything. I've had kids sobbing in my room. Oh my gosh, I can't tell my mom that I got a 96 on my test. I'm not kidding. Yeah. And I mean, out of 100, out of 100.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And like, that breaks my heart to know that kind of pressure is on that child. And I think that, that kids need to know that they can go to their parents with anything and that they're going to support and love them no matter what is happening in school, and that they're going to help to make things better.
How do you think so now this is like, I always try to think about it, I talk to my nephews about it too. And like, I don't even know how I would manage like social media, right? And like, just so kids being exposed to not, so, growing up, it's okay. I went to, speaking of like middle school, high school, I was in Troy, but then you're kind of like in Troy, you're worried about people in your school. I mean, really, like, okay, so I went to Larson, but then I didn't know anybody from any other middle school until you go into high school, and then you start meeting some people here and there, but like now it's like the kid is, a kid can grow up, but then social media kind of gives them this is how you should be, and a lot of it obviously not being reality, or not. And there's a lot of filters, a lot of fake stuff going on there. Obviously, access to more things than they should probably be exposed to as well. So do you think that really like kind of contributes to some of the kids having more like anxiety or mental kind of just struggling on with identity?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would, as a teacher, I would discourage the use of social media for kids until they are emotionally able to, able to handle it. And again, it goes back to that whole distraction thing. You know, we don't need to see what's going on in the hallways on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever it is. Um, it it is a huge distraction, and it is very troubling to kids. I think that our counselors in our building would probably agree that social media is one of the biggest factors of mental unwellness in their offices. I mean, in our building, we have 2 counselors and we have over 800 kids.
Oh, 2 for 800? Wow.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine. I used my counselor in high school. I didn't really use the counselor in middle school too much, but in high school, Mr. McGruer was the name. He was amazing. I mean, he was a support for me too. He was like I felt like he was on my team, throughout high school. So that was great. And I can only imagine now with like everything that these kids are exposed to, and just it's got to be a lot of work for them now.
And it's hard for them to build relationships with that many people, right? And that's something that I've always encouraged my students to do, and my own kids, is build relationships. You don't know when you might need something from that person, and you might want to. I don't consider it using somebody. You're building relationships for a reason. It's gonna open doors for you. It's gonna help you in the long run. And if you have a relationship with somebody, you're much more likely to get more empathy from them in situations. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they can see you. That's a good way to put it. For sure.
Yeah, he saw me. Yeah, Mr. Grew was great. He was like one of my, when I graduated, that was like one of the. I mean, there's a lot of teachers that I was just like kind of, in like even at that, even as a senior graduating, I was like, wow, the 4 years here, they're so amazing. And then during it, freshman year, just it is what it is. But then as I kind of went through, and then like finally to senior year, I was able to like really appreciate just the way that all the teachers there, whether I agreed with them or not, for whatever the thing was, like they were just phenomenal and just getting me through to that part, and yeah, it was great.
They had to take care of Mike with the good hair.
They did. Yeah. They did.
Well, and you know what? Teachers honestly are really fun people.
Mm-hmm.
They are fun people to hang around with.
Yeah.
Most of my closest friends are the people that I work with, or that, I have relationships with across the district, and they're just, we like to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and especially if you're, like you said, if somebody's going to be a teacher, if you don't like it, like they'll get out. They probably won't last. Like, 'cause I mean, teachers, you're gonna understand people. You're gonna be personable. So like the nature of like I always had fun with the teachers, even to the degree where it's like, okay, focus, let's get back.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to like talk.
We're gonna go off on a tangent.
Yeah, exactly. I just like start asking random questions, but they were always they would see the person a lot, and it was really good.
Well, and I also think that it's really important for teachers to let the kid see you as a human being. It's important for them to see you vulnerable, because when they see you vulnerable, then they feel safe being vulnerable. One of my big mantras in my room is, this is a safe place to make mistakes. It is okay to make mistakes in this room, because that's how we learn. If you're not making mistakes, I'm not doing my job, because I'm not challenging you enough. And it's okay to make mistakes, and for them to see us as humans, and for them to see us make mistakes, and even just, they don't need to know everything about our lives. But one of the things I start the year with every year with my students is, I have alopecia and I wear a wig. And every day, the first week of school, I wear a different wig to school every day to see if they can figure out that something's different.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that, and we talk about that being like as a lesson after the last day of school that week. And that being a vulnerability and how hard that is to share with people sometimes,
Mhm.
you know, and when you can share your vulnerabilities with people, you definitely, it opens the door for them to feel that way with
Yeah.
you too.
Lets them know that it's okay, and maybe they, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. We all have
Yeah.
something. We
Yep.
all have something. Some of our things are more visible than others, but we all have something that we're
Mhm.
dealing with.
100%.
So, segueing into teachers being fun people, when did you become a Lions fan?
So I never liked football, ever, ever. My dad was a huge sports fan. He loved all sports. And then I married Kirk, and he got season tickets with his brothers in the early 90s, early to mid 90s at the Silverdome. And he just had one seat, you know, their group, everybody had their own seat. So they'd go to the Lions games, and that was his guy thing to go and do. And then when they moved to Ford Field, we got 3 seats. And so that way I could go, or he could take a friend, and if we both went, we could take one of our kids, or he could go with the kids. And because they both started to really like football, Lauren more so than Lainey. Lainey liked more of the social atmosphere of it. Lauren liked she wanted to learn about football. Yeah, she wanted to learn about the game. So I started to go to the games then, and the tailgating is probably what brought me into it. Like thinking about the fun of it, we did big tailgates. We ended up having, you know, a large group, and his brother is an amazing cook, and so he was cooking crazy things down there, you know, like ribs and brisket and salmon, and it wasn't like your hot dogs and brats and hamburgers. And that kind of brought me in because food is definitely important in my life. And then I started learning about the game. So obviously, when you start learning about something, you become more interested in it, usually, right? So once I started learning about the game and how it worked, then I started to really like it. So I would say probably like early 2000s. So it's probably been about 20 years, I would say. I was a fairly knowledgeable Lions fan. And we've waited a long time to get where we are right now.
I think I was like 7 years old last time when they played Washington in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, Lainey was a baby. Was right before she was born. I was pregnant with Lainey when they were in that. Yeah.
And
Was that 93?
92.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the 92 season, it was in 93. Yeah.
Oh, wait. So it was 92. So she was a baby then.
Yeah.
So how has this season been as a season ticket holder?
So exciting.
Because you went to the 2 playoff games.
I did.
Oh, you did?
I did. Yeah. I did. I went to the last 2 games. Yep. So exciting. Like so much electricity and energy. And I just think it's so cool how it's bringing so many people together in our city.
That's what I love about sports too.
Yeah. And music is like the same. Music is the same thing. And people from all different areas, all different walks of life, and you're all there for the same reason. Yep. You're there to cheer on your team, and they're just doing amazing things, and I'm super excited for them.
Yeah, it's my dad. That's like one of the things that I growing up bonded over with my dad about. It was big time in sports, and we bonded like the Lions and Tigers mainly. And it's funny because he's super like the Lions are that's his team. So like now to see them finally, get back to this and then even be like, just because he's, like even every game, like watching it, he'll think like, oh, it's like he's just waiting for it to drop, like the whole season.
Yeah, for
he's
sure.
waiting for it to like revert back to the SOL stuff and,
Yep.
And he's just, so now like the fact that it's not happening, it's like disbelief in a little bit. He doesn't even know, say, I don't know what to do with my hands type of thing. Like he doesn't know what to do. He's like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
So it's really nice.
We have a group of people around us that are also all season ticket holders that, that it's just fun. You're sitting with the same people every week unless they sell their tickets for some reason. But it's fun. The energy is just, it's pretty amazing.
What is your favorite memory from a game? We can say prior to this season and then this season. That'll be 2 separate questions.
Okay. So I think prior to this season was back in, I was probably 2010-ish, around that time. Maybe it was a little later than that. We got to go down on the field for pregame. Kirk had an accident, and I actually wrote to our ticket guy. Like, you have a ticket salesman that does your season tickets for the year. And I wrote him a letter asking if there was any chance that we could get him down onto the field. And, it would be pretty cool. So we got to go down on the field for a pregame while they were practicing. And Eric Bambach actually went with us for that game and got a ball while we were down there. But that was pretty cool, just to be close and up front
on the field. Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. And Calvin Johnson era, he's my football hero. I will always love that guy.
Calvin, yeah.
Yeah. His niece actually niece or cousin went to our school last year. She was an 8th grader last year. Yeah. So we used to have conversations about Calvin.
Yeah.
But he is definitely my football hero. I just think sad how he left, but just a good guy.
Happy to see that they made it good.
Yes.
Now. Yeah.
Yes. I love seeing him out on the field and cheering on the team.
Like, I was like, so mine was Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
So then when he retired, I was like, being young, I'm like, he's in his prime. And then then that whole thing of, with the family not coming around and that whole thing. And then when it happened with Calvin, that's where I was like, man, this is not good, because you just start, both these players were amazing. And so, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Good that he's there.
One of my favorite times watching Calvin was when they were playing, I think they were playing the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and in a huge snowstorm. It was a blizzard, and just watching him perform, it just Megatron,
100, yeah. It doesn't matter how many people you put on him or what the thing was. That guy did it all. Stretched the field, possessions, covered.
He is my jersey. It's
the
the only jersey I have is a Calvin jersey.
And I haven't met him, but like from what I see, like seems
good
like
man.
Seems like the nicest person, So that's another thing too. No, receivers tend to have a little diva kind of attached to them, and that was like the opposite of what he was. So even as a player, he was quiet and just dominated. Just let his play speak for himself. So that's great. Yeah. That's good. That's a good player to have.
Yeah,
as your
for
favorite.
sure.
Yeah. Who's Kurt's?
Kirk's favorite player?
Yeah. Lions player, or maybe all time too.
Probably Chris Spielman.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
He was a big Spielman fan.
How happy are you that the Lions play in a enclosed building, seeing some of these really cold games?
I'm pretty happy about that. I don't do well in the cold. Our walk to the stadium is about probably a mile or so.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we probably walk about a mile. So walking, like not this last game was like 26 degrees for our walk. That was okay. The one before that was pretty brittle. It was brittle. It was brittle cold. Yeah. But I'm happy. It's always 70 degrees in there. I will say this Sunday, it felt like it was 100 degrees in there because of all the energy. I was really hot. It was a challenge. But I also was dressed. I had my boots on. I had a hat on, and so
they were probably over capacity too.
Yeah, but it is nice. The temp in there is like he knows what it is. I think it's 70 or 72 or something always in that stadium. Yeah. But it was electric, that's for sure.
So, would your favorite memory now be sometime this season?
I'd have to say probably 2 games ago.
The first playoff game.
The first playoff game. Yeah, what state did we play then?
That was, who did they play in the first game?
Wait, 2 seasons ago?
No, 2 games ago. It was, so this was the Bucks, and right before the Bucks was...
Oh, the
Vikings?
Yeah.
No, the Vikings was the last game of the season.
Hold on, man.
CTE.
Hold on. Yeah, getting choked out in jiu-jitsu too much.
I should know
hold on.
You were there.
I know I was there. I know.
Oh, it's the quarterback.
Oh, it was the Rams.
Yeah, it was the Rams. Yeah. Okay.
Stafford's reunion.
Yes. So that I would say that was probably So Michigan played California that day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the Lions and the Rams. That was exciting to have him. I am a fan of Matthew Stafford.
Me too.
Great guy. They've done him and his wife, have done a lot of things for the city. Too much hype and drama about all of that.
Yeah. But, what about his wife trying to say that people were booing their kids?
When you go into a stadium and it's not your stadium, no matter where you are, you get booed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. It didn't have to. Detroiters love Matthew Stafford. But he left.
They were calling him the Detroit or the LA Lions or Detroit Rams. Remember?
When they were in the Super Bowl.
Wearing jerseys that were half Rams, half Lions. So people love him.
Yeah,
sure.
they do.
Yeah.
And he knew going into it. He knows what kind of fan base we have.
Yeah.
And that's something to be really proud of. Like, we have a fan base that knows when to be loud, knows when to be quiet. And I love that our players respect the fans and love the fans as part of their team,
Decker's crying, getting emotional just with knowing how the city and the fans are. It's, he understands.
But probably one of my little favorite moments from that game was when Alexis, my niece, who I love dearly, told me at the end of the game, we need one more first down and it's over. And I'm like, what? And she says, one more first down and it's over. And I'm, Alexis, explain that to me. Why is it over? We have 3 minutes left in the game, or however much it was. And she's like, we're going to be able, we can do this.
So she knew that. I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I was like,
she's like, there's 40 seconds in every play and we have 3 timeouts. And it was what it was.
I was in disbelief.
I was like, so, okay, I learned something new. And they got the first down and it was like, it's over? Yes.
Yeah. After that first down, when he took the knee, I was like, hold on, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
But then that's interesting too, because in this last game, they had it was like third down and they knelt it. The Lions kneeled and what's their names? Tampa Bay had 1 timeout left and there was like 30 something seconds left. So the Lions kneeled and then it was fourth down. And so if they kneeled that, it'd be a turnover, right? But the Bucs were down by 8. So that's like a thing people are whining about, is that the Bucs didn't play till the last play.
Yeah, I read that.
Because they could have called that timeout. I mean, they
could have got the ball back.
Yeah.
Where was the Lions? Where were they at?
The Lions were on like their own 30 or 40 or something. Like they would have punted it, but
I didn't even we were at
your Serbian bar.
No, but they do have Serbian cuisine there. Some grill, but it was a Tap and Barrel. It was a great place, but it was so busy. I mean, we were all celebrating, but I didn't even realize that. That's interesting that they didn't call it.
Yeah, I just read that yesterday. So
another conspiracy about it being fixed.
Yeah.
Well, they want the
49ers and the Ravens.
49ers and Ravens, yeah.
Super Bowl. But
I think America wants the Lions.
I mean, the Cowboys aren't doing their job, so.
Yeah.
But, all right, we've been at this now for, it looks like, 2.5 hours. So, let's get some closing thoughts from old Janae Taylor.
Janae.
Yeah. Looking back on your 38 years, give us some closing thoughts, some wisdom, whatever you want for the locker room philosophers out there in the world.
I have made some pretty important relationships in my own life through teaching. And there are a lot of things I think that would be very different if I hadn't made some of the decisions or met some of the people that I've met, including your wedding, Carlos, because your wedding took place at a pretty cool barn, right? And the people that own the barn were parents of students that I had, and their son is one of those guys that needed a lot of attention from me. And we just developed a really great friendship because of him and his struggles, actually. I always remind them that the first time I met him, mom said, I'm so sorry. And dad said, tell me something good about my son. And I think that that kind of just says a lot right there, that they were parents who cared and were trying to do everything that they could for their son who had a lot of challenges. And we worked as a team together, and that team factor is huge in education. And I think that is just kind of a part of the picture. And it's all about relationships. It's just all about building relationships in life. And I can't imagine my life being I can't imagine doing something different than teaching. And I will definitely miss it when it's over.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing all that wisdom with us for a whole 2.5 hours.
Thanks.
Flew by.
Thanks for having me, and I was honored to be asked.
You were a little nervous, too.
I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I was like, what? But yeah, well, thank you.
Here we go. Hope the people got some value out of it.
I hope so. Yeah.